Any health-related information on the following show provides general information only. Content presented on any show by any host or guest should not be substituted for a doctor's advice. Always consult your physician before beginning any new diet, exercise, or treatment program.
Welcome to Five to Thrive Live, a podcast about thriving. For those who have been affected by cancer and chronic disease, I'm Dr. Lisa Schuler, and I co-host with my good friend Carolyn Gazella. You can find all past show podcasts on every major podcast outlet and also the schedule on our website, which is ithriveplan.com. So tonight, I will be talking with Dr. Ellen Milton, who I have the privilege of working with at Sonoran University. As some of you may know, I'm the president of Sonoran University, and Dr. Milton is the director of our mental health counseling program. And we're going to be tapping into her expertise about a very important and timely topic, and that's holiday blues. So before we get to her, let me tell you a little bit more about Dr. Milton. She's been a licensed professional counselor since 2010 and a licensed professional counselor supervisor since 2012. She maintains a private counseling practice where she sees clients in a variety of situations with a variety of issues. Dr. Milton's heart of service is always with her clients and with her students and interns, and she believes that her most important role with her clients, interns, and students is serving as an ally and an advocate. And she currently is the program director and an associate professor in the Master of Science Clinical Mental Health Counseling program that we have here at Sonoran University. So before we start talking with Dr. Milton, I want to thank our sponsors who make this podcast possible. First, Cetria, a patented form of glutathione clinically proven to raise blood glutathione levels. Glutathione is the master antioxidant in the body and is the body's primary defense against free radicals. You can learn more at cetriaglutathione.com. We also thank Cognizin Citicoline, which helps to keep the brain's energy-producing centers firing on all cylinders. So if you would like to enhance your brain function, memory, focus, and attention, look for Cognizin on the label of your favorite dietary supplement for brain health, and you can learn more at cognizin.com. We also thank ProThrivers Wellness Supplements, including ProThrivers Wellness Sleep, a supplement which combines higher than usual dose of melatonin and other sleep-supporting natural ingredients, which is designed specifically for thrivers. You can find ProThrivers Wellness Sleep at pureformulas.com. And finally, Dr. Ohhira's Probiotics, a best-selling probiotic for over 30 years with 12 probiotic strains, which are shelf-stable due to their unique fermentation process, and no refrigeration is required. You can learn more at drohhiraprobiotics.com. So with that, Dr. Milton, welcome to Five to Thrive Live.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I want to jump right into this important topic because this is a beautiful time of year, but it's also a very stressful time of year. And I think you probably see a lot of this. So what are some of the mixed emotions that you commonly see in your patients?
The holidays can be wonderful and hard at the same time. The holiday season often brings people a mix of joy, nostalgia, stress, and expectation. And it's really common to feel conflicting emotions at this time. Excitement along with sadness, anxiety, and gratitude, and certainly paired often with exhaustion and fatigue. Acknowledging that duality is the first step toward caring for yourself. You're allowed to feel all things, and none are bad or wrong.
Mm-hmm. Duality, the tension of opposites, I think is
Yes.
operational so often. So, where this surfaces a lot is in family gatherings for lots of reasons, of course. I'm wondering if you have any insight on how people can recognize these dynamics surfacing as they experience the holidays.
Oh, absolutely. Family gatherings can bring connection, laughter, and tradition, but they can also resurface old dynamics and emotional pressures. You may experience warmth and belonging at one moment and then tension or overwhelm the next moment. And both can be true. So, giving yourself permission to notice what you're feeling without judgment. Set an intention to take care of yourself ahead of time and decide ahead of time what you can reasonably commit to doing.
Hmm. Yep, that's very good. So just sort of, I'm going to add a little bit to that perhaps. And here, I'm listening to what you're saying. I'm thinking that also implies a sense of being gentle with oneself and
Mhm.
kind of giving oneself a little grace as they experience these ups and downs.
Absolutely. Practicing kindness to yourself, taking small breaks, practicing kind phrases such as, I need a moment. I'm stepping outside for fresh air. I'll join back in shortly. Planning
Hmm.
for moments of rest and building in small recovery breaks during gatherings and even during travel.
Yeah, great. So, how can someone tell the difference between sort of normal, and I'm using air quotes, holiday blues versus when it might be time to really seek some professional mental health support? So, something a little bit more serious.
When those feelings of sadness, emptiness, or hopelessness last longer than expected. When you can ask yourself if this is interfering with my ability to live my life after the holidays, right? Am I coping in ways that concern me?
Hmm.
Then you might be looking at a place where you might need a little bit of help, right? And some reframe after or during the holidays. It doesn't mean that you're weak or doesn't mean that you're failing. It can often reflect accumulated stress going into the holidays. We all have that going into the holidays, unresolved grief or loss, burnout, and then some underlying depression that or anxiety that maybe comes to the forefront at this time.
Hmm. Yeah, okay, good. I think that's a really important thing you said, which is if the feelings of anxiety, for example, or depression go on longer than
Mhm.
one expects they should. So, for example, if it's holiday blues, you're with your family, you're not normally spending so much time with your family, you feel some anxiety start to surface, and then the family gathering dissipates or you get a break and the anxiety goes away, that's good or that's okay, that's normal. But if it just persists and persists into the new year, then probably need some help, some support.
Yes, if it interferes with the person's ability to function, then that is probably the largest red flag
Hmm. Function at work, function in their day-to-day
anywhere
activities.
in any important area of their life, work, relationships, school, right? Whatever those functions that they have to perform as an adult are, if it's interfering with their ability to function in one important area, then they might want to contact somebody like me.
Hmm. Okay. So let's take this from an integrative health perspective, which is what we try to
Mhm.
focus on this show. So you, I know, have deep training, and we'll get to this in terms of counseling. But what roles do things like sleep, movement, nutrition play in supporting mental health, especially during the holiday season?
Well, they're huge, right? We have to care for our bodies during these very stressful times. So, prioritizing hydration, nourishing meals, movement, right? Being able to get up and move around, sleeping as best you can. Holidays often interfere with a lot of these things. We may prioritize hydration and nourishing meals at home in our daily lives, but then when we get to moms or we get to wherever we're going, it's really easy to fall into habits that we're not used to. Maybe a little too much alcohol, a little too much turkey, right? Not getting up and moving like we usually do, not being in a place where we're comfortable sleeping. Practicing well being directly supports emotional resilience. So,
Hmm.
if you can keep those two in balance, right?
Mhm.
Then you can make it through these holidays.
Mhm. Yeah, it's so interesting because um hydration, I'm glad you brought that up at the forefront. I think that's something people don't recognize as much as perhaps they should in terms of
Mhm.
the impact that being dehydrated has on not only what we would consider to be like physical health, but in fact mental health and well-being. So, yeah, that's a good one.
Absolutely. And alcohol is very dehydrating.
Yeah, that's right.
It's also a central nervous system depressant, right?
Mhm.
So if someone is already experiencing feelings of anxiety, stress, depression, right? Alcohol can just exacerbate those feelings.
Mhm. Okay, good tip. So, what are some let's sort of transition a little bit and maybe you could share some simple sort of practical mind body practices that people can use what I call just in time or in the moment when they start to feel overwhelmed. They have the wherewithal to recognize that they're starting to feel overwhelmed. They're in the midst of their family gathering. Is there anything they can do to maybe avert moving into a more deeper feeling of anxiety or depression?
Well, and I think it comes down to, again, setting an intention to take care of yourself ahead of time. Knowing what you can and can't do, knowing what you're willing to do and not to do, right? And then practicing good boundaries. As a counselor, I couldn't make it through this if I did not mention boundaries, right? And knowing what your boundaries are, right? And what healthy boundaries are and what healthy boundaries are not. They're not control, right, of other people. They're choosing for ourselves how we're going to spend our time and how we're going to take care of ourselves. And that includes things like eating and drinking, and just being a part of conversations. If your family is very conservative and you don't lean that way and these conversations make you uncomfortable, remove yourself from the situation. We have so much power and control of ourselves, but when we go home often and we get back into that family dynamic, we kind of forget all of those things. Right, and we fall into the trap of other people's expectations. What the expectations of the holidays are supposed to look like, or trying to recreate or create the perfect holiday. I ran across something the other day and it really stuck with me, and it's expectations are not invoices.
Hmm.
Right? And that was just massive for me to really think about that. Expectations are not invoices that have to be paid. Our expectations are not, their expectations are not, right? They're simply expectations. And so maintaining those healthy boundaries around our bodies and around what our bodies need at this time is paramount. Recognizing what those are for ourselves and
Mm.
knowing that it's okay to enforce those and it's okay to say no. And supporting yourself is not selfish. It's actually what makes deeper connection with other people possible.
Mhm. You know, I wanna just dive into this a little bit more. So boundaries, so important, as you said, but I would have to say easier said than done. I mean,
True.
especially during the holidays, like the example I love that quote too, that expectations are not invoices, meaning that just because, let's say in this case, a family member might have an expectation of how you participate in
Mhm.
the family gathering doesn't mean you have to do it that way.
That's right.
But I think when people get together with family of origin, a lot of, as you alluded, a lot of the sort of patterns
Yeah,
resurface, and it's hard. It's hard for people to
it's hard.
sometimes create boundaries. So, I mean, how do you counsel your clients on ways that they can sort of take that courageous step, if you will, to assert their own needs first?
Right, and that comes with experience. You may not be able to do it the first time you go home, right, after you graduate from college, but as you become an adult and have your own family and you're enforcing your boundaries and your family's boundaries, right? Helping people understand that the choices are all theirs. They hold all the cards. So choosing how and when and with whom they spend their time is their choice and their option. And that includes how to pick and choose where you're going to spend what holiday with what family, right? It includes a lot of different things. Communicating ahead of time about your schedules, about your traditions, because as we grow up and have children and grandchildren of our own, we create our own traditions. So being able to take those home to that family of origin and into those dynamics are huge, right? And maybe it's about creating new traditions in the family of origin, right? Bringing those home and saying, here's what we do when we'd like to do it here. And then protecting your own time for rest, recovery, protecting time for personal or family rituals, making decisions based on capacity rather than expectations, limiting exposure to conversations or dynamics that are emotionally harmful, allowing yourself to be yourself,
Mhm.
showing up authentically, and being able to be brave enough and have the radical candor, right, to say, I'm not comfortable doing this right now, but maybe after a while.
Mhm. Yeah, so good. And I think that, this is not easy what what you're
It's
talking
not.
about.
No, it's
Right.
not.
But the payout is great.
It
You know, and I
absolutely is.
and I think it's um it's not just for the person. So the person who's kind of getting their courage together to establish their sort of assert, if you for lack of a better word, their own
Right.
needs in a situation, even though that might at first be off-putting to their family member or the family at large. In the end, I think that gives the family or the other a chance to really see the person on their own terms and to develop a deeper, more authentic relationship, which will also pay off in the long run.
Absolutely. To grow the system to accept everyone.
Yeah, right. So what about for people who during the holidays might be experiencing, pretty significant grief? Loneliness comes up for a lot of people. There's oftentimes, for whatever reason, I've noticed in my clinical practice that there's can be a lot of death associated around this time of year. So there's, definitely can be loss that people are re-experiencing just or other big life changes. So they're kind of in a state already. Then they're in the holidays. How can do you have any ways that they can still be in those legitimate experiences of grief, loneliness, etc., but also feel the holidays in a way that gives them maybe some peace, some joy, some comfort?
Finding ways to honor their grief, finding ways to honor their feelings. The first year after I lost my mom, we set a place for her at the table. And we went around the table and we shared a memory. And it brought up a lot of tears. Even on a very happy day, it brought up some tears. But we were honoring those feelings of grief. So finding ways to honor your feelings, whether those are grief or sadness, loss, whatever those feelings are, shoving feelings down is not a good way to deal with them. They come out sideways. I see people in my practice who've tried desperately to shove those feelings out and they will not be denied. So, finding ways to honor them openly and authentically, and again, helping the system grow to accept that and to embrace that.
Mhm. Yeah, so good. That's a really good piece of advice. I think just not suppressing, so important. And I think most others would really appreciate the opportunity to either experience their own grief, if it's a shared grief, or at the very least to just support and be there while you're experiencing the grief yourself. So yeah, that's a really important thing for people to think about. Speaking of showing up or feeling kind of supportive for others, just showing up for others while at the same time honoring your own limits is another challenge, I think, at this time
Yes.
of year. And so I'm wondering if you have any advice around this area.
My advice to the people that I work with who struggle with holidays is to touch base and stay grounded to those people in their system outside, right, who can help them stay grounded. Just a quick message or check in can remind someone that they're not navigating these things alone. They're not navigating a difficult dynamic. They're not navigating joy or sadness or grief alone. So, helping people stay connected, not only with the people that are there, but with the people that may not be there for them at that time, but they can still stay connected to.
Hmm. Yeah, good. Um, I wanted to take a moment to give you a chance to describe to people what you're a licensed professional counselor and you're running a master's program in mental health counseling. So, for somebody who's not familiar with this field, what number one would they experience if they went to see somebody who had a professional counseling master's degree? And number two, who goes into this program? Like, tell us a little bit about this, if you wouldn't mind.
People go into a counseling program because they've recognized in themselves that they want to be there on a deep emotional level for other people. Not giving advice, right? Not telling someone how to navigate everything that they're going through. To me, and what I tell my students is that what we do is we're connecting dots. Because if an individual sitting across from me could connect their own dots, they wouldn't be there. So students come into this program and they'll tell me things like, I'm a good listener. Everyone says I'm a good listener. Everyone comes to me for advice. We quickly have to work on that idea that in this field, right, it's all just about listening or that it's about giving advice. It's really about the connection that we have with our clients. It doesn't really matter how we do this work. And there are lots of different modalities and interventions and ways to do this work. None of that matters at the end of the day. What matters at the end of the day are those two people in that room and the therapeutic human emotional connection between the two of them. So, students that come into this program are looking for that deep connection. They're looking to make that connection with other people, knowing that simply by sitting with someone, hearing them deeply, responding authentically, right, that helps individuals make decisions for themselves and then connecting dots across their experiences.
Beautifully said. So let's take it now from the client's perspective. They walk into a counselor's office. What would be, I don't know, this is horrible to generalize, but I'm going to ask you to do it anyway. What
Okay.
would be a typical kind of experience for them?
A typical first experience is going to be a pretty generic getting to know that individual. One of the courses that students take in a counseling program is research, and they learn about collecting data. In that first session, we're collecting data. We're collecting data in the form of stories, in the form of life experiences. So when that person sits down and we get the introductions out of the way, we may say something like, tell me why you're here, right? Tell me what brought you in today. And tell me what you're looking for from this experience. And that lets me know then what questions that I can ask them. So I'm hoping that they'll tell me their story, and they usually do. And that's what we're looking for in those first few sessions. We deepen as we get more data, right? But
Mm.
at the end of the day, this is very kind of research oriented in that we're collecting a lot of data from our clients in order for us to form schemas and theories of the patterns of their relationships and their systems so that we can help them change the patterns that they're not happy with. Did
Hmm.
that make sense?
Yeah, very much so. Sounds like it would be good for almost everyone.
Oh, definitely. Oh, absolutely.
So let's go back to our theme of holidays for a moment.
Okay.
And if someone listening wanted to create sort of a holiday mental health plan for themselves and perhaps their family, what would be some of the key elements? I think you've alluded to this already, but what would be some of the key elements that you would encourage them to include?
Again, at the risk of sounding like a broken record, setting that intention for them to take care of themselves ahead of time, deciding ahead of time what they're willing to tolerate and what they're not willing to tolerate, deciding ahead of time what their schedule can look like and what they can commit to, right? And then managing their own expectations so that it's okay if traditions evolve or involve other people or other things, or if the holidays don't match past years. Focusing on what's meaningful for them for now, right? Rather than trying to recreate something perfect. The holidays invite complexity, and they can be a time of connection and joy, but also a time of stress or emotional heaviness. Holding space for all of those emotions allows people to move through the holiday season with more authenticity, more care, and more intention and better self care.
Hmm. Very good advice. And I think that should hit home with most of our listeners in one way or another. So, Ellen, any final thoughts that you would like to leave with our listeners?
The final thought that I want to leave is something that I alluded to before, supporting yourself and setting that intention and thinking about those boundaries is not selfish. It is actually what allows us to make those connections with the people that we love and care about.
Hmm. Setting boundaries is not selfish. That's a good
Right.
quote. And your other one is expectations are not invoices. Another great one. And I am going to add in there, I think we have talked about, but just this idea of being gentle with oneself and
Mhm.
practicing a little forgiveness because, this is not easy stuff that we're talking about. And so it's going to take a little trial and error, and that's okay.
Absolutely. Yes.
So this has been a great show. I really want to thank you for taking time out of what I know for sure is a very busy work life and home life. And I so appreciate working with you at Sonoran. I'm really delighted that I had the chance to showcase you and your obviously big heart and mind to this topic. And where can our listeners find out more about you? Do you have a website or any social media that you would like to share?
Currently, I do not have a website. I practice through Brightside, which is a psychotherapy consortium. But my personal email is ELLE1242 at gmail.com. And I'm
Oh,
happy to connect with individuals.
wonderful. Well, that wraps up this episode of Five to Thrive Live. Again, I want to thank our sponsors. First, ProThrivers Wellness Sleep Formula. I also thank Cetria Glutathione, the superior glutathione, cognizant acetylcholine for brain health, and Dr. Ohhira's award-winning, shelf-stable probiotic. And most importantly, I want to thank you, listener, for joining us. It is the holiday season. So if you're listening to this before the holidays, I hope that you have beautiful, peaceful, and meaningful holidays. If you're catching this after the holidays, I hope that you have a beautiful new year ahead of you. And as we always say, may you experience joy, laughter, and love. It's time to thrive, everyone. Have a great night.